Welcome to the CondoVultures.com podcast with your host, Peter Zalewski, a Miami real estate broker, Wall Street consultant, and expert witness. This podcast is focused on identifying real estate buying opportunities in the South Florida condo market of Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. The CondoVultures.com podcast is not authorized by the South Florida real estate industry and will most likely annoy many of the region's talking heads. This podcast will feature straight talk and salty language that could be offensive to some. Please remember that past investment success does not determine future gains, especially in South Florida's volatile condo market. For more information, please visit CondoVultures.com. Don't buy a South Florida condo, discounted or distressed, before taking a Condo Vultures correction tour. CondoVultures.com offers weekly bus and walking tours that focus on educating buyers on the how-tos of identifying discounted condos, analyzing the opportunities, and purchasing units. Every tour attendee receives a list of all condo projects in a particular market, a market assessment handout, and unmatched expert analysis. For more information on the condo correction tours, please visit condovultures.eventbrite.com.
This is Peter Zalewski of the Condo Vultures podcast. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. And I wanted to alert you that if you have a property that you're looking to sell in the Tri-County, South Florida area, I would encourage you to reach out to Jenny Cortez, a licensed real estate broker with cvrrealty.com. She's my partner. She's been in the business for north of 15 years. More importantly, she knows the market. She knows how to get a deal done. And she also realizes that it's more important to get a price that you can accept and sell the property rather than to hold firm on some price that's never going to be achieved and ultimately languish on the market. So if you're looking to do a deal that you want a skilled expert who can help you sell a property, reach out to Jenny Cortez at 305-865-5859, 305-865-5859, or visit her website, cvrrealty.com. Welcome to Miami Reporters Roundtable. I'm your host, Peter Zalewski from Condo Vultures. If you're tuning in this podcast, you're going to hear a discussion by current and former journalists talking about some of the biggest stories that occurred within the last week, have to do with the South Florida real estate market as well as the economy. Purpose of this podcast is to cut through all the fluff and give you, the audience, straight talk as to what's really going on. Who is our target market? Well, it's basically developers, it's real estate professionals, it's investors, and it's gadflies. So if you're somebody who likes to go to cocktail parties, like to be ahead of the curve and have something to discuss, we just might be the podcast for you to listen to. We're going to cut through what's going on in the marketplace. We'll give you a sense of what's really happening and give you something to consider. Everybody is a veteran journalist. Some of us are former, some of us are current. So let me go ahead and introduce you to our panel this week. We have a gentleman who's a journalist for over 25 years, primarily in the state of Florida. Right now, he's a public relations and marketing firm. He's based down here in Miami. So no one else but John Gruss. He has a company called Gruss Communications. You can get him at GrussPR.com. That's GRUSSPR.com. And you can also get him on Twitter, where his handle is, or I should say X, because Elon Musk has changed it. It's now called X, formerly Twitter. You can get him at John Gruss, JeanGruss. What's going on, Mr. Gruss? And by the way, I love your attire.
Oh, thanks, Peter.
Oh,
and
nice.
And I also have the new mug. Goes together really well.
You're wearing
Anyways,
the Miami Reporters Roundtable podcast merchandise, which we're selling. We'll give you a little bit of details about that merchandise shortly, but it's a very good look on you, Sean. Who else do we have on the podcast? We have a gentleman who's a journalist for over 20 years, wrote about white-collar crime, wrote about did business stories. He also did restaurant reviews. Right now, he does public relations and communications work. He's a consultant, no one else but John Fakler. You get a hold of John at JT Fakler, Fakler. You can get him on X, which is formerly Twitter. What's going on, Mr. Fakler?
How you doing, Peter? Glad to be back on the Unauthorized Podcast.
Mr. Fakler, for the last 6 months to 9 months, there's been a lot of conversation about a quarterback from the Green Bay Packers who was traded to the New York Jets. Basically, a king's ransom was given up just the other night. We're recording this on a Tuesday. On Monday night, yesterday, the Green Bay Packers star who came over to the New York Jets, he had his first start. He lasted a grand total of, I think it was 3 snaps from scrimmage. Five snaps from scrimmage, and now his season is over. Any next day reaction you might want to offer?
Well, since we talk about this just about every week, I was not surprised that you're bringing this up, but I'm still in shock. Obviously devastated. And just trying to get my wits about me. And this is a good distraction for me, podcast. So I'm glad that you invited me back.
And Mr. Fakler, are you going to continue to watch NFL games this year? Given the fact that you were in Miami Dolphins territory, Miami Dolphins are a main rival of your team, the New York Jets, where Aaron Rodgers played for 5 snaps. Are you going to continue to watch the NFL, or are you going to move on to something else?
No, I'm not. I'm not a quitter. Neither are the Jets. We went to watch the game last night at Monday Night Football. I made sure I didn't wear any of my Jets garb because it is Dolphins territory. It's enemy territory. But there was nobody there for some reason. There was about 3 or 4 people at the bar, and got a chance to watch a great game. Jets won. I'm psyched.
I'm psyched as well because it's the clear path for the Miami Dolphins to win the division. Now that the Jets look like they are doomed, New England Patriots are blah, and the Buffalo Bills did not have a good showing. So very encouraging news, although we hope Aaron Rodgers comes back soon because we do need a little bit of competition. We don't want to just prance through the AFC.
Okay.
Who else do we have on the podcast this week? We have a gentleman who was a journalist. He's been a journalist for over 30 years. Does international business stories, does investigative pieces. He's based out of Washington, D.C. He's also a Washington Commanders fan for his NFL team. It's no one else but Ken Silverstein. If you want to get a hold of Ken on X, which again is formerly Twitter, you can get him at Ken Silverstein, the number 1. Ken Silverstein 1. What's going on, Mr. Silverstein? How are you?
I'm good. Everything's pretty good, actually, which is very unusual. So something like probably, I don't know if any of you have seen Dodgeball, but right before the finals, the team says that, they have confidence because their coach Patches as long as Patches is around, it's all good. And then the next thing, some giant, I think it's like a giant scoreboard falls and kills Patches. So I feel like I got to watch out for falling scoreboards. But otherwise, I only want to say beyond that, I only want to say never call me a Washington Commanders fan. I'm not allowed to say the old name, which is politically incorrect. Just call me a Washington football team fan.
So Ken, you're a Washington's Washington Football Club fan. Mr. Fakler, who is notorious for having bad luck, has been there's been grumblings that he might be leaving his New York Jets and coming over to Washington. Any reaction?
I mean, I don't know how anything could be worse than the curse of Danny Snyder, but Fakler could be it. Far away. Root for the
don't worry about it. I do respect. They got a good team this year, though, so I do respect the team.
He's going to get on the bandwagon. You better watch out, Ken.
The bandwagon's not going to last. Don't worry. 8-8 is the best we can hope for, I think. So.
Perfect. So let me tell the audience, if anybody wants to get a hold of us, you want to comment, you want to ask a question, get us on Twitter. Our handle is Miami-RRP, Miami-RRP. Again, it is not AARP. Some of us might look a little long in the tooth, but not all of us are. It's Miami-RRP. It stands for Miami Reporters Roundtable Podcast. Let me also tell you, and Ken, this is news to you. If you look at John and anybody watching this podcast, some of you might be listening on an audio version, but if you go to a video version, such as Spotify, or if you go to YouTube, you can actually watch this podcast. You'll see that John is wearing some of our garb, some of our merchandise. It says Miami Reporters Roundtable. It's got our logo established in 2020. We're now selling merch, Ken. And if you agree, we want to make you one of our superheroes. We look at the journalists, much like Marvel looks at all its characters as superheroes. We're taking screenshots during our podcast. We're putting it on different types of merchandise. You can get flip-flops. You can get T-shirts. You can get throw pillows. You name it, we're selling it. We actually have Ken, get this. We got a shower curtain with Mr. Fakler's face on it. So the first thing in the morning, when you walk in to take a shower, you can see a nice big picture of Mr. Fakler. What do you say to that, Ken?
I mean, if you've been out drinking and you're a little hungover and queasy, sorry, Fakler, but I mean, you are not the first thing I want to see in the morning in the shower of all places.
Fantastic. So let me just remind the audience, we're going to go through 6 stories. I handpicked them. I sent them off to the journalists, 2 stories each, asked them to give them a read. We're going to summarize the stories, and we're going to ask the journalists to go ahead and comment. We're not doing advertising for the podcast, so let me just give the real quick sponsor. Sponsor this week is my brokerage firm called Condo Vultures Realty. Condo Vultures Realty CondoVulturesRealty.com. If you go there, maybe someone with my firm can help you out, whether you're looking for brokerage services and or consulting, including expert witness. So if you're just looking to sue somebody, need somebody to come in on your side, assuming the numbers work out, maybe someone with our firm can help you. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into our story. We're going to go to story number one. Mr. Fakler, you were a member of the supporters club for Inter Miami, where Lionel Messi plays, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba, some of the others. You've been the one match you had a little bit of a problem. You didn't wear the right garb, so they kicked you out of the supporters club section, but you are a paying card-carrying member of Vice City. So you are a resident soccer or football fan. Maybe you should focus on that now that the Jets season seems to be over. But that being said, let's go to you with the first story, which is about Lionel Messi. This is coming out of all publications, the New York Post. I'll read you the headline, first couple graphs, Mr. Fakler, then I want you to comment. Headline, Lionel Messi buys $10.8 million mansion in South Florida. Now, before I read you the story, Mr. Fakler, let me just set as a precursor that one of the players that came over to play with Lionel Messi is a guy called Sergio Busquets. He's a good friend of Mr. Messi. He also played with him in Barcelona. Mr. Busquets has bought a house in basically Fort Lauderdale area on the Barrier Island. Mr. Messi, as you're going to find out from this story, bought very close to Mr. Busquets. He basically are forsaking Miami and buying in the Fort Lauderdale area where the stadium is currently located. So let me read the first couple graphs. Mr. Fakler, I want you to comment. Argentine soccer star Lionel Messi and his wife just plunked down $10.8 million for a waterfront Fort Lauderdale property in an off-market deal. The Real Deal broke the news of the transaction yesterday. The 10,500 square foot residence at 91 Compass Lane is in the Bay Colony gated community. It boasts 8 bedrooms, 9.5 baths, and a 3-car garage to go along with a pool and 2 docks. It's also near the Inter Miami soccer stadium. Messi, who won the World Cup for his native Argentina in December, joined Inter Miami in July. The team is owned by David Beckham, Jorge Mas, and Jose Mas. Mr. Fakler, Lionel Messi came to Miami saying that he felt like it was a very Latin culture. He liked the feeling of it. But Mr. Messi, as well as Mr. Busquets, who's originally from Spain, played for Barcelona, they both bought in Fort Lauderdale. What anybody who's been down here knows, there's not really a Latin feel, if you will, to Fort Lauderdale like there is to Miami. What do you make of that? And what do you make of a 9-bedroom house for Mr. Messi, Mr. Fakler?
Well, we talked about Busquets when he purchased his place, and the fact is they both have families. So, Broward is much more family-centric, and, it's a little bit slower pace for a growing family. I think that might have a lot to do with it. I am still shocked, though, that, again, he bought in Fort Lauderdale because technically they're getting a new stadium. It's getting built and should be ready online in 2025. We all don't know if Messi's contract he'll still be here, but it's very surprising that he makes such a huge purchase. He's already got condos in Sunny Isles Beach, which I guess is technically, closer to the Miami Stadium. But why is he buying a stadium close to the practice facility in which they're at now in Broward County, when they're moving to a new stadium in 2025? So I got a hunch. My hunch is that I don't know if this has been reported, but he may have been offered some sort of partnership or ownership in the team. And if that's the case, he might be here long-term. He might leave the country, of course, to play in different leagues that there are around the world. But he may be really looking to make South Florida his home place. So,
and let me try to provide some context for the audience.
Okay.
Inter Miami is building a stadium with 25,000 seats. It'll be located in Miami, right by Miami International Airport. It's scheduled to come online in roughly about 2025. And right now, Inter Miami is playing. Its stadium would be considered the practice facility. That's also where the headquarters are for Inter Miami. So, Mr. Fakler, like you say, if Messi is in fact has an equity stake in Inter Miami, his house would be very close to where the corporate headquarters are. And then Inter Miami would simply only play those matches in Miami once the stadium comes online.
Oh, interesting. So that might explain it then. I don't know if it's been reported about the ownership stake part of it, but it just makes sense. Obviously he's very close to Beckham and the Mosses, who are the ownership's primary owners of the team. So, anything's possible.
Mr. Gruss, you're on the record saying a 25,000 seat stadium is way too big. Once Messi's gone, you're probably not going to be able to fill that stadium. So I'm very interested and to hear what Mr. Silverstein has to say. Mr. Silverstein, you're a big soccer fan, a big Messi fan. What are your comments, or what's your perspective about Mr. Messi, who came to Miami and is on, basically has been, when interviewed, has said he loves Latin culture in Miami, but he buys in Fort Lauderdale. What's your first reaction to that?
I mean, give me a break. Messi, of course he buys in Fort Lauderdale. Basically, like Messi, as far as I can tell, he's about as Latin as Giselle. Brady, of all, I don't know, Tom Brady finds unpopular view, least attractive Brazilian woman of all time, the whitest, the whitest Brazilian woman possible. Messi strikes me as exactly that sort of a person. I doubt, I can probably dance the goddamn tango better than Messi. I mean, he's not like, I'm sure that that sounds good. I don't see this guy as being deeply, connected to Latin culture. But secondly, I did not let this pass with quickly just saying that Lionel Messi is the biggest joke. I am not a fan of Lionel Messi. He is the biggest joke as a as a superstar in any sport, with the possible exception of James Harden, who, Harden is great during the season. He can't do shit when it matters. Neither can Messi. Now you will say, oh, but he won a World Cup. Yeah, after what was it, fourth or fifth try? And when the refs, it was clearly a fix. He's on his way out. This loser has fucked up constantly. Every possible, in every prior World Cup, Messi doesn't just screw up. I mean, he screws up in an epic way. So, he's playing Germany, and they're in the finals against Germany in 1990. I think it was it was whenever. It was later than that. I mean, much later, actually. But whenever it is, the final, it was in Italy, because I was in Italy watching it on a giant screen, and I knew what was going to happen. I mean, there's 30 seconds left. They're down by a goal. He's got a free kick, is barely more complicated than a penalty. He puts it 30 feet over the net. It's not just that he missed. The goalie didn't have to do anything. And I knew it would happen, because that's what he always does. He misses penalties in critical moments. In this last World Cup, it was clear they just said, every game, Messi gets a penalty in the first half. I think he actually missed one of them. But, it totally changes the dynamic of the game to give a team an early lead. I'm telling you, I believe for sure, 100%, oh yeah, FIFA is not corrupt. They absolutely conspired to make it as likely as possible that poor fucking Messi would finally get his World Cup on his last try, because that's it. He can't, he's done now. So, he's a total choker. And the only reason that people in Miami are so enamored of him with the current team, hey, look, he's basically playing, Boy Scout Troop 103. He's playing in U.S. soccer, okay? It's the crappiest soccer, it's among the worst of any major country. It's by far the worst. We have a joke of a national, sport here in the U.S. And so, sure, he's going to be great. Fine. Honestly, if you put me in front of a kindergarten class, I can play all 11 of them. I'll trip them, elbow them, and score 10 goals a game for half and take a break. That's what Messi is doing now.
Peter, can I just add, John, hold on. So for the record, anybody watching or listening to this podcast, Mr. Silverstein, you did live in Brazil, and you're probably partial to Brazil. That
has nothing to do with anything.
Okay.
Yeah, of course it is. I'm a fanatical Brazil fan, absolutely. But I've also watched this guy for so many years and seen him screw up so many times. It's it's a joke. This is no secret. Just go to Google. When I'm feeling down, I do this. Go to Google, do a search for Messi misery, and then just wait for the pictures to come up. They're all over the place, because he's always at the end of the game having fucked up once again, on the ground in absolute agony. It's in his blood. He cannot play under pressure at all.
No.
He can for Barcelona. He cannot for the national team, which is it's like the Super Bowl. It's like the national team of Argentina. He can't perform for in the Copa America, the South American Championship, or the World Cup. It's a joke. So they handed him both on the way out.
Peter,
By the way, if anybody wants to get hold of Mr. Silverstein, his Twitter handle is at Ken Silverstein #1, at Ken Silverstein #1. He loves to talk football. He loves to talk soccer. You can get him there.
Bring it on. Bring it on. I trash Messi all the time. I hate the guy.
Mr. Fakler, you wanted to add something as our resident soccer?
You just took the word. You took the words out of my mouth. I just wanted to tell a Latin audience to please contact Ken at his Twitter handle and not my Twitter handle.
Fantastic. John, we're going to go to you with story number 2. John, this story is coming out of the Miami Herald. Let me set the scene before I read the headline in the first couple graphs. The scene is right now, it is a seller's market still for single family houses and basically any kind of residential in Miami as well as the state of Florida. Primary reason is during the pandemic, people were able to work from home. Many of them picked up and they moved to Florida. They came from New York. They came from California. They came from elsewhere. And as a result, a lot of the supply was gobbled up. In addition to that, we have investors who come here, they purchase places and they're running them as Airbnbs. So that is the background. Let me read the headline, first couple graphs, Sean, and I'll ask you to comment. Headline, again, Miami Herald. In the hunt for real estate, a Miami developer goes underwater for new land to build on. First couple graphs. An iguana falling from a palm tree qualifies as excitement on the lake for Anthony Johnson, whose home overlooks tranquil waters that obscure what could be Miami's next bustling construction site. For the moment, the 30-acre parcel sits 10 feet underwater at the bottom of Silver Blue Lake, a former rock pit in Little River Farms neighborhood north of Miami. An entity controlled by developer Kareem Lakhdar purchased the underwater land off Northwest 17th Avenue for $750,000 in 2018, banking on winning approval from Miami-Dade County to fill parts of his acquisition and build apartments on the newly created real estate. A quote from one of the residents, Mr. Johnson, who's 64 and he's a retired police officer. The quote is, "Never did I think someone would want to fill in my lake. I'll see windows and doors and balconies. Right now, I see peace and tranquility." John, what do you make of the fact that there's such a housing demand that they want to fill in lakes? And second of all, if you buy a waterfront property in Miami, does it mean you actually have a waterfront property, or is it simply a future construction site? What say you, John?
Yeah, I mean, this is why you need to be extra super careful when you buy any real estate in South Florida and actually in Florida, period, because anything can happen. There are just countless examples that I wrote about over the years about changing land uses, changing zoning. A lot of it is under political influence. I mean, there was a good line in the story about the homeowner there saying, this kind of thing wouldn't happen in Coral Gables. So he's got a point there, but the thing is that Florida's zoning laws and development areas are constantly changing. So you could think you're in a residential neighborhood and all of a sudden you have some office buildings going up, or you might think you're in a single family neighborhood and all of a sudden you have, a multifamily building going up. And it could be just for political reasons. The fact that this was a former rock pit mine, which, they're all over the place. These former mines that are now filled up with water. There people own the rights under the water. Who knew? But this is why you have to tread so carefully in South Florida.
It's an interesting point, John. I mean, we've heard of golf courses before being acquired and projects going up. I'm not that familiar with lakes, so this is something people need to look into. Just like John said, is they're going out and they're looking for property. Ken, we're going to go to you, Ken Silverstein. We're going to go to you with story number 3. Ken, Miami's always got a new hustle. There's always something going on. In the beginning of the 2000s, you had all of the Spanish companies moving in here because they were setting up shop. They were going through privatization in Latin America, so they used Miami as a location. Then we also had the internet beach, Silicon Beach, they called it. We had crypto, the crypto bros most recently. when all of these crypto guys with based on Ethereum, based on Bitcoin, they all came here and they wanted to buy. Well, we all know what happened with FTX. That was the firm that was actually sponsoring our stadium here, which used to be called American Airlines Arena, then became FTX before the founder basically was indicted and arrested and is facing all kinds of charges. It's now become known as the Kaseya Center. So that's the backdrop. So crypto bros are gone and Miami is looking for its next hustle. And I want you to comment on whether or not this might be the next hustle. So this is coming out of NBC6. It's the NBC affiliate down in Miami. Headline, Miami named as OnlyFans capital of the United States. Subhead, according to a study, Miami is a hub for content creators who are willing to bear it all. For some, it's a side hustle. For others, it's a full-time job that pays. Anybody who doesn't know anything about OnlyFans, it's basically a private network. Back in the day, some people would call up a 900 number or an 800 number. They'd have to pay a fee to talk to somebody. Now you're able to actually go online and have your own little video chats. That's the background. But Ken, let me give you the first couple graphs, and then I want you to comment on whether or not this might be the next big thing in Miami, replacing the crypto bros who tended to go disappear once Bitcoin plummeted. Here we go, Ken. Miami has earned a new title, and it's a scandalous one. The Magic City was crowned the OnlyFans capital of the United States, according to a new study that found that most models on the site are right here in Miami. OnlyFans.com is an 18 and older subscription platform empowering creators to own their own full potential, monetize their content, and develop authentic connections with their fans. Now, when I have something that's more spicy, meaning videos in my case, I do shoot nude. Said OnlyFans content creator Helene Moreno. I do shoot with partners sometimes. I don't consider myself a porn star or anything. Moreno has posted more than 1,000 times and has over 1,500 pictures and videos. And like other OnlyFans creator, her subscribers pay a monthly fee for access to her content. Ms. Moreno is charging $12 a month for subscribers. Mr. Silverstein, what is your view on OnlyFans, and will this replace crypto bros as the next big thing in Miami, since we've just been deemed the OnlyFans capital of the United States?
No, I mean, it's not going to replace the crypto bros, because the crypto bros, I mean, first off, it's not a new hustle. It's just one of the many Miami hustles, and it's not a new one. But I mean, why Miami? Why would Miami have this large number of OnlyFans? I mean, okay, like, why is it that if you're going to go, what city in the United States has the largest number of coke snorting stockbroker assholes? Which city would that be? New York, right? Doesn't take long. I mean, if you're going to say, okay, what city is filled with just like the most, like the worst and largest major city of, racist cranks? I mean, Boston's going to be right up there. Okay. There may be some competition, but I'm going to go with Boston. I mean, same thing here. Why? Miami is, of course, it's the capital of OnlyFans. Give me a break. You got a whole bunch of really good looking women living in Miami. You've got a bad labor market where, wages are bad and it's harder to make money. You've got a lot of strip clubs where women are working, partly because the labor market is bad. I mean, it's like, you make way more at a strip club than you would at many jobs. And that's like, if you're working in a strip club, then doing an OnlyFans is not a big leap. And then there's also a huge porn industry. I mean, so you've got, you don't need to move to Miami to start an OnlyFans, right? You can do it from anywhere. There are certain things, like if you're going to, snort coke on and sell stocks, then you go to New York, obviously. If you're going to be a racist crank, move on up to Boston. You don't need to move to Miami. I mean, it's just, there's a whole big existing community of women who naturally you're going to have a large, a relatively large number of women who will, have OnlyFans sites, right? I mean, it's pretty easy. It's not like you got to move there or anything. So why, I don't see it as being the next hustle. It'll just be, an ongoing grift, part of, and I got to say, I mean, it's a respectable grift. Unlike a lot of Miami grifts, there's nothing wrong with OnlyFans. I mean, as long as it's like, no one's being harmed or that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I have no problem with OnlyFans, and why not? Miami's obviously. I saw that in the article. Gee, big surprise! Las Vegas is number 2. What could possibly account for that? Why is it late in Clarksville, Tennessee? I have no idea. Why Miami 1 and Las Vegas 2? Who's to
Now, for the record, there are close to 5,000 OnlyFans creators in Miami, men and women. This is made up of all men, so I don't want anyone to think it's only women around this. And
I
Miss
thought
Moreno,
the number was actually higher. Wasn't it more like 6,000 something? And
no, it's 5,000. And Miss Moreno, who is the first person quoted, she's making an average of $9,000 a month as a side hustle, sort of related to this. So for whatever that's
pretty
worth.
good. Yeah, pretty good.
Pretty good. Absolutely. So for story number 4, John, we're going to go to you. This story is coming out of the Wall Street Journal. John Gruss, story number 4. Story comes out of the Wall Street Journal. John, let me read you the headline, first couple graphs, and I want you to comment. Headline: the fall in home prices may have already be over. And first couple graphs, home prices aren't falling anymore. After declining on a year-over-year basis for 5 consecutive months, the longest run of declines in 11 years, U.S. home prices actually rose in July. Surprisingly quick recovery suggests that the residential real estate market downturn is turning out to be shorter and more shallow than housing economists expected after mortgage rates soared last year. Scarcity is a big reason. High interest rates have prompted homeowners to stay put rather than buy new homes and take on more expensive mortgages, resulting in unusually low inventory homes for sale. John, what do you make of that? Is our housing correction, is it over? While last week we had a story saying that the housing prices were roughly 31% overvalued in Miami. So what say you, Mr. Gruss?
Yeah. Well, the moral of the story is don't listen to housing economists. Yeah, they're full of BS. You got to watch the people who put their money where their mouth is, and that could be institutional investors or mom and pop investors, people who are stuck now with Airbnbs that are not bringing in the cash like they thought it would. I think the next 6 months is going to be very telling. I think there's an oversupply of Airbnbs. I think a lot of owners are going to start putting those on the market. And, I think, there's a supply and demand imbalance, clearly, very little supply, but that could change pretty quickly. If you believe the numbers of Airbnb investors, and the fact that they're not making as much money as they thought they could, the situation could change really quickly. And in places like Miami, and South Florida, where there are a lot of investors and a lot of people have bought those condos that they could make a killing putting their units on Airbnb, they might be in for a rude awakening. And South Florida, of course, we all know about Florida real estate. It's boom and bust. So, obviously we've been through a significant boom, and if history is any guide, I think we're due for a bust, quite frankly.
Interesting. We're going to go to Ken with story number 5. Ken Silverstein, we're coming to you with story number 5. This is coming out of, it's Yahoo, but they basically picked up a Miami Herald article. Now, you are based in Washington, D.C. You've lived all around the world. You spent a number of years living in Miami. You also come back and forth. So I want to get your take, not necessarily on the real estate side, but more so the nightlife side and how South Beach, the destination, Ocean Drive, which everybody knows, could be changing. In this most recent Florida legislative session, in an attempt to counter moves to try to put in rent control because of increasing housing costs, the state passed some legislation that basically allows developers to come in, build affordable housing in return for building affordable housing, which is effectively a loss leader. They're not going to make a lot of money on it. They get to build the highest and maximum density. As long as they earmark affordable housing, they can go as high as humanly possible. So that's the backstop, Ken. Let me read the headline, first couple graphs. Plan to replace Clevelander with housing is already a political football in Miami Beach. According to Miami Herald, first couple graphs. When the owners of the Clevelander Hotel and Bar in Ocean Drive announced last week that they plan to replace the popular party spot with a high-end restaurant and a 30-story residential building, Miami Beach politicians and candidates for office will quickly label it a disaster. The mayor said, worst idea ever. and the mayor later posted an image showing how much such a development would tower over the neighboring Art Deco structure along the famed South Beach Street. Take a look at how entirely out of scale a 30-story building will be in an area that roughly is 2 to 3 stories tall. Let me go on with the story. Mike Greco, a former city commissioner and state representative, is running to succeed Gelber, posted a video standing outside the Clevelander, saying the new building would be by far the tallest building anywhere near the entertainment district. It will be casting its shadow so large that it'll be a reminder every day to all of us here in Miami Beach how Tallahassee, which is where the Florida legislature is based, continues to strip away our power to dictate how architecture is preserved and how we control development. One more graph, Mr. Ken Silverstein, that I want you to comment. Bill Rodeo, a former MTV executive who also is running for mayor, wrote on Facebook that outsiders like Montreal-based Justa Group should not have more influence on our city's development than those who call it home. Mr. Silverstein, what do you make of the fact that this historical district known as Ocean Drive as well as Art Deco basically can be whitewashed and maximum density in an area where 2 or 3 story buildings could suddenly have neighbors that are 30 stories tall in order to build affordable housing? What kind of impact do you think that'll have on the South Beach scene? And do you think it's a good or a bad thing?
Well, it's obviously a bad thing, but it's also not a done deal, right?
Oh, well, according to the legislature, they can go forward and do it, and they don't necessarily need to get local support or sign off. It's basically a clear path to go ahead and build, and a hearing doesn't have to be held. If memory serves me correct.
That's typical. I mean, no doubt. Like, there's no way that could ever be approved without, a bunch of money changing hands between, elected officials and the developers. I mean, there's no way that, like, if you put it to a straight up and down vote, it would get 5%. If it was put to the residents of the area, maybe some of those payments will be structured to make them legal. Maybe others won't, but it's Miami. Obviously you couldn't do this, without, paying off elected officials, which, wouldn't be surprising. It would be essential, in fact. Now, so it's a terrible idea, obviously. I mean, South Beach in general and Ocean Drive are already been completely transformed. I mean, it's like, I barely go there anymore. I mean, most of the people I know, nobody wants to go to South Beach anymore. I wouldn't anyway. And I think a lot of people that it's not like a great destination. I mean, it's, obviously it's always had tourists. It's just changed in a way that's unfortunate. And this would be one other change. I have to ask you something though. When you mentioned this story, I thought the Clevelander initially was, I'm sure I've been there, or at least I think, but I thought it was the place we went to last time I was in Miami. It was pretty dumpy. The Clevelander, from what I'm reading online, is not. I mean, every time you take me to a bar, like, look, anybody listening to this, if you go to a bar with Peter, I mean, just watch out. Every time I go to a bar with that guy, it's like, right before you go in, it's like, look, you got to keep your eyes open. This is the sort of place you can get shivved. So, which is always true. Like, Happy's or On the Rocks, and the place you took me last time in South Beach, but it wasn't the Clevelander. But there was some other place. Clevelander definitely looks a little bit higher end than your typical Zalewski bar, but it also sounds like an institution, been there forever, and a lot of the South Beach institutions have just been forced out and whatever, like torn down. It's really unfortunate. And this, I mean, putting up a 30-story tower in that spot is moronic. I mean, that's like I say, you could never do that without paying off, the people who need to be paid off. Nobody's going to approve that.
Yes.
It'll probably happen. Fine, it's Miami.
Just for clarification, the story says the city's regulation limits building heights on Ocean Drive to only 50 feet. Basically 10 feet per story, so maybe a 5-story tower. They want to go 30, just to give you context. And the Historic Preservation Board, the group that has the power to review and reject redevelopments in the area, the Live Local Act, which is what it's called, says local governments cannot limit an affordable project's height below the tallest height permitted within 1 mile of the project or 3 stories, whichever's higher. So basically, the way the law was written, government has no say, local government, the state's able to override it. So with that, I want to go to Mr. Fakler. Mr. Fakler, you've been in Miami since the 80s. You got here back in the day when some New Yorkers came down here. They saw the Art Deco area. It was really one of those areas that a lot of people would, it was portrayed in the movie Scarface, a little bit of a rough area. And back then, there was this movement to basically knock everything down and build high rises. And these groups got together. They ended up preserving it. And then South Beach turned into what it is. Mr. Fakler, does this remind you of the late 80s when there was an attempt to basically whitewash all of South Beach and put up all kinds of high-rise housing? Or is this maybe a little bit different because there's the affordability aspect? What say you, Mr. Fakler?
Well, the affordability aspect is interesting because, back in the day when I was here, there was only 9th to 14th Street. Everything else was a lot of the older generation, to put it mildly, was basically sent packing because the prices went up. They couldn't afford it. The senior citizens who lived there, who, basically populated South Beach and Miami Beach, are now all gone. So affordable housing, is it making a comeback? Is that, because this seems to be a push now for affordable housing, although I've never seen it in Ocean Drive or South Beach at all. You see it in other parts of Miami, but this move towards workforce housing, affordable housing, haven't seen that in South Beach. So, I'm surprised if this is going to be a one-off, if it's like an experiment to see if this will work.
No, this is a state law that just went into effect July 1st, and we've been talking a lot about that. So with that being said, it's a perfect segue, Mr. Fakler. We're going to go to story number 6 coming out of Miami today. Headline: 631 unit tower plans 125 micro units and 1,000 bike spaces. Again, Miami today. First couple graphs from Mr. Fakler, then I want you to comment. Developers plan a 43-story mixed-use residential tower with some micro dwelling units for vacant site in the city of Miami's Omni Community Redevelopment District. The application lists 16th Street Partners, LLC, and owner-developer as Hakeem South Towers at 45 Northeast 6th Street. The new building is to be home to 631 residential units, approximately 3,140 square feet of commercial use, 469 parking spaces, and ground floor retail and amenity spaces. Of the residential units, 125 will be micro units. Mr. Fakler, what do you make of the fact that micro units are now popular? And I'll tell you the square footage momentarily about a micro unit. Basically, it's nice and small, kind of like what you would see in New York, where basically you walk in, you can shower, you can eat, you can watch TV, and you don't even have to move your feet. So what do you think of the concept of micro units coming to Miami?
Yeah, the concept is interesting, although a bit late. Like you mentioned, New York was big on this. The micro dwellings are generally, 250 to 400 square feet.
Correct. No more than 400 square feet is what somebody will be expected to live in, but as little as 275 square feet.
But what's different about this is it's being demanded by the Gen Zers and millennials, where in New York, we're going back to my, baby boomer days, it was starting to become popular. Here, what's happening is the Gen Zers and the millennials are giving up space to be close to culture and stores and shopping and schools and work. And they're willing to sacrifice the square footage to be close to everything. But one of the things I thought was funny about this commission meeting, this plan was approved, by the way. But what happened is this business about the bicycle spots. Anybody who's lived in that area, isn't this near Edgewater? Was this 16th Street around there?
Yeah, if anybody wants reference, this is about 3 blocks from one of 2 homeless shelters. This would be the downtown Miami homeless shelter.
Okay.
So these micro units will not be located near the water. It's not like you're going to the beach on the Barrier Island. You're going to live in a small place. This is actually west of Biscayne, probably by about 5 blocks, right off of Miami Avenue.
But the point is, with the bicycles, hundreds of bicycles were zoned in for this. And, the commission was asking the developers, like, why the bicycles? Isn't that unrealistic? You've lived in the area. I've lived in the area. And I can tell you, if you're going to ride a bicycle on that, it's a suicide mission. There's no places to drive a bicycle. What? So they're asking, because I think that the zoning, the code is that they have to have 1 bike per parking spot or per unit. There's 600 and change units. So you're talking about hundreds of bicycles. So the commission couldn't get their arms around this. Like, why do you need this? And basically they said, well, it's not our idea. It's the code. I don't know if it's Miami 21, one of the newer factions that, demand certain rules and regulations about the way these are built. Architecturally, it's supposedly beautiful. It's supposed to look like a really upscale condo. So they were very happy with that. But they did have questions about, certain issues, like what do you need so many hundreds of bicycles?
John, any comment about living in a unit that's no more than 400 square feet, far removed from the water or any kind of popular destinations?
Well, I mean, I think the younger generation now is they're not spending a lot of time, in their condos. They're working, they're at the gym, they're in restaurants, they're in bars, and really, when it comes to affordability, this might just be a great way to sort of provide housing for young professionals who are just starting out in their careers, and who, quite frankly, don't spend a lot of time, hanging out in their condos. They're out hustling, they're out working, they're out, at the gym and nightclubs, restaurants. They want to go to the beach. They can just hop on their bike and go to the beach.
And John, just a follow-up question to
Yeah.
that. Is this typically the type of development you see late in a cycle because there's not enough housing, all of a sudden these extremes are taken and lo and behold, the market shakes out and then people look back and are like, wow, what were you doing? Or am I misguided?
I mean, that's actually a huge risk. I mean, if you're going to buy one of these units and the market tanks, and then you get like a whole bunch of new supply in the market, much bigger units and all that. I mean, of course, people are going to go for the bigger units. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a risk for both the developer and for the buyers.
Can I just add that I think this whole move to minimalism, these small units I'm really all for it. I really, I've been downsizing myself. This whole minimalism, thing is something I've embraced. I know that Peter likes to call my cottage, in fact, the mausoleum.
Ken, any opinion about living in a place that's under 400 square feet and not being located next to a popular destination, whether it be sand or sea or nightclubs? Would that be an appeal as somebody moving to Miami?
Oh, yeah. I mean, sure. It sounds great. Like as an alternative to death, I guess. Like what? I mean, 400 square feet. I don't know what that is, but that's pretty small. And if it's like not well located, it sounds pretty horrible. I mean, I'm having a hard time figuring out exactly what that means, but 400 square feet, that's a small place. I mean, is it a studio? Do you have a bedroom or is it all just one room?
No, it'll be like a hotel room. If you come to Miami and you stay in a hotel, like maybe in South Beach, many of those hotel rooms are ballpark 200, 250 square feet. Those that might have a kitchen, they'll be a little bit larger, or like maybe an actual bedroom that's carved out from the place. Think of like an embassy suite or something.
But this is to live in. It's not to. I mean, it's not to spend a night in or.
Yeah, it's a rental. It's an apartment building you'd rented for 6 months to a year.
I mean, it sounds horrible. Like I don't know why you'd want to do that unless you had no choice, and it really would be. I mean, there's got to be some. I don't know. What are they charging? Do you know?
The rent is not listed here, but ballpark, you're looking at about $3 a foot on a median basis in greater downtown Miami. So if we just do some rough math, you take that 400 square feet and you do it by $3 a foot, probably looking at $1,200 to $1,500 a month.
I mean, I guess if you're 22 years old and you just got out of college and you're just going to get drunk every night, you want to be in that location, but it's, otherwise I just can't imagine. I don't know who would live like that. I mean, there are neighborhoods where, Miami's not cheap, but there are plenty of neighborhoods where, you pay a little bit more or you share a place and you can live much more comfortably. Hey, to each his own. That's not for me.
Nice. And that's a perfect way to end our podcast. I want to thank Mr. John Gruss. John was a journalist for over 25 years. He has a public relations marketing firm called Gruss Communications. You can go and check out his website, GrussPR.com, GRUSSPR.com. You can also get him on X, which is formerly Twitter, at John Gruss, JeanGruss. Also want to thank Mr. Fakler, John Fakler. He was a journalist for over 20 years, wrote about white-collar crime, did business stories, and also did restaurant reviews. Right now, he does public relations and marketing. You want to get a hold of him, you can get him on X, which is formerly Twitter, at JT Fakler, Fakler. And I also want to thank Mr. Ken Silverstein. Ken's been a journalist for over 30 years, very soft-spoken, afraid to take an opinion. Anybody wants to reach out to him, you can get him at Ken Silverstein1. Ken Silverstein1. And I'm Peter Zalewski from Condo Vultures. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. Let me remind you, you want to send us a comment, you want to ask a question, you can get us. Our Twitter handle or X handle is Miami RRP, not AARP, but Miami RRP, which stands for Miami Reporters Roundtable Podcast. And if you want to check out some of our merch, you want to buy that shower curtain with Mr. Fakler, so first thing in the morning you can see it. You want to buy a t-shirt like John Gruss has on, go to condovultures.creator-spring.com, condovultures.creator, CREATOR, hyphen, that line in the middle, spring, like I can't wait for spring.com. Until next time, hope everybody takes care of yourself. Make sure to like us, make sure to subscribe. We'll catch up soon. Ciao, ciao.
It's a simple formula, and it works. Buy low, sell high. We're Condo Vultures, and when it comes to your real estate, we help you buy low. At Condo Vultures, we represent the buyer, and now's the time to buy. Log on to condovultures.com for more information. Condovultures.com. And remember, before you sell high, you have to buy low. Featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, 60 Minutes, and Time Magazine. Condo Vultures Realty, a licensed Florida real estate brokerage capitalizing on the condo correction since 2006.
This is Peter Zalewski of the Condo Vultures podcast. Before I started doing these podcasts, I was in the business of being a licensed real estate broker, a contributing columnist for the Miami Herald, as well as the Miami Real Deal, but also extra witness work in consulting. So if you are looking for an expert witness, or if you're looking for consulting services, a straight talk perspective as to what's going on in a particular marketplace, a building, or what happened previously, for whatever your situation is, whether you are an attorney, whether you are an institutional fund looking to invest, or whether you're a lender who's trying to come up with some sort of strategy and approach for your lending committee going forward, I just might be able to help you. To get a hold of me, please reach out to Peter at condovultures.com. That's Peter at condovultures.com, or give me a call to the office at 305-865-5859, 305-865-5859.